Rajhan, hi guys, today and welcome back to my channel. And today we're finally continuing with the Scum Villian Read-alongs. This is a great start to volume 2. So yeah, we left off on quite a cliffhanger in my opinion, and I've been dying to get back into it, and things have just not been working out for this particular time slot in my schedule at the moment. I'm hoping that maybe after this week we will be able to switch it over to being on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because even though I know that's in the middle of the week and it might complicate things a little bit, I do think it's a bit easier because I often find that I have things that clash during the weekends, so maybe doing it during the week will help in that regard. I don't know. But yeah, so I am gonna give like 3-ish minutes, I don't have, I never have the patience for 5 minutes, even though I know I should technically wait at least 5 minutes. But for people just to come in if they get the notification and want to join, hi, good to see you again. But yeah, so we left off, I'm so excited about it, my goodness. We left off on Zhen Jingqie accidentally having his like shoulders and upper chest exposed. Very scandalous indeed. So yeah, that is where we're gonna be at. I have been working on a long form video that's supposed to be going up on Wednesday. If I will actually be able to produce it for Wednesday is a different matter entirely. But yeah, it's kind of been making me want to really get back into this because of the content of the video. And I'm just like, the fact that I couldn't was very frustrating. Anyway, so just that is all to say that I'm very excited for today's one, and I'm hoping that we get very far along, and we shall see. I do have tea here with me, and then we shall be taking our what is the word? A 10-minute break at the halfway mark. So anyway, I think we can let's get started. For anyone who is following along in their own copies of the book, we just finished up page 102 with again the quite shocking art, and then we are now going to start on page 104 at the top. The audio is not working fine, can't hear you well. Oh no, that is not good. That is very much not good. That's very strange. Wondering why. I'm very scared to plug something out in case that takes away any audio. Let me just check something. Oh, sorry, that was a terrible sound. I'm not sure what I could potentially change to make the audio sound better. Just see something. I don't know if that changed anything. I'm hoping it did because otherwise I had absolutely no idea what to do. Okay, is audio better at all or is it still the same? Oh, okay, wow, yay, okay, wonderful, it's that, okay. At least now I know, what the issue is. Will not repeat that mistake in the future. Okay, so with that out of the way, I think we can get started right on the 5 minutes past mark. Oh, let me just get comfortable here. Okay, page 104. As Lobingher backed away, the blood mites that had been writhing in Shenxingqi's internal organs seemed to startle as well. They scattered like birds and beasts, and the sense of blockage in his blood vessels instantly disappeared. Oh, I forgot what a grim part we were on there, though. Shenxingqi panted, his heart flooded with tears. His period was finally over. Now, how exactly does this small scenario pusher work? Does it just make me lose some of my clothes? Might as well call it small stripping assistant. Oh my word! What's the logic underlying the function? Does it just take advantage of Lobingher's psychological disgust upon seeing a man's half-naked body? I mean, you're not far off the mark, but disgust is maybe the wrong word. Lobingher stood stiffly with his back turned for a while, like he didn't know where to put his limbs. Without warning, he tugged off his outer robe at top speed and tossed it behind him. The robe hit Shenxingqi full in the face. Shenxingqi was quite speechless. What's the meaning of this? This scene, these actions, why did they make him feel so thoroughly uneasy for no discernible reason? He couldn't help but be reminded of that classic bad trope wherein, after a violated young maiden was rescued, her boyfriend draped a warm coat over her. Hate that trope, but oh my goodness. Oh, wow. He's not wrong though. Shenxingqi's hair stood on end. He lifted his arm, letting Lobingher's black robe slide from his shoulders. The soft, fine fabric dropped to the ground. Silver light shimmered along the exquisite, sleek embroidery. At the rustling sound, Lobingher turned back to look and saw his robe abandoned on the ground. Shenxingqi had even cautiously pushed it towards him a bit. Shenxingqi had actually also considered folding it for Lobingher, but he was only thinking about it and hadn't yet made a move to do so. When he looked up, Lobingher had turned round, and his eyes were blinding as they reflected the firelight. It seemed like he was in a fury. The veins on the backs of his hands popped. His fingers clenched and unclenched several times. Then, as if trying to vent his rage, he fired off a succession of spiritual blasts. He was in fact launching these attacks with no target at all. A few hit the surface of the lake, striking waves of water high into the air. Another hit the wall of the cave, opening a giant crater. Pieces of stone rolled down, and the torches shook and fell into the lake. However, they weren't extinguished, and instead they continued to burn brightly on the water's surface, casting Lobingher's face in a flicker of light and shadow, lending him a ghostly air. Ooh, that's an interesting detail. Oh my goodness. Like, I like the fact that the torches don't go out, because it's such a unnecessary detail, but it adds so much to the vibe, in my opinion. But also, I love that he's kind of just like, probably just releasing some pent-up energy, if you guys catch my drift. Lobingher carefully drew back. I almost forgot. Shizun dislikes anything the demon race has touched. The oh-so-mighty male lead had given up protecting his image to throw a tantrum for no reason. How is this any different from a little child kicking their toys all over the place when they don't get their way? You're cutting your own ratings here. A perfectly good cave and its perfectly good walls were chock full of holes before Lobingher finally finished raging. He turned to find Shenxingqi still observing him, unperturbed. A vein seemed to jump a few times in Lobingher's temple, and he forced out through gritted teeth, "In a month, I want to watch every step of your fall from grace with my own eyes." Oh no. Oh no, no, no. I'm stressed. Having thrown down these words, Lobingho swept his sleeves and stalked away, slamming a hand onto the mechanism as he exited the cave. With a rumble, the water curtain poured back down. Changing to his side, Lobingho has really taken to Huanhua Palace like a fish to water. Gong Yishao smiled bitterly. Not only that, Luo Shishong's spiritual power is outstanding, his conduct unwavering, and his actions swift and decisive. Everyone else is left in the dust, so it's no wonder Shizun regards him so highly. If Luo Shishong weren't so insistent on not taking Shizun as his master, I'm afraid I would never have a chance of becoming head disciple. Sincere sympathy seeped into the gaze Shen Jingxue sent towards him. "This junior came to see you about an important matter," Gong Yishao said resolutely. "This morning, Peak Lord Xiang requested an authorization pass from my master, but his application was delayed, and he doesn't know when he'll be able to get through. He seemed to have some pressing business, and he asked the junior to bring a letter." As he spoke, he reached into his lapel. Hell, it really was a letter, and it was only hastily folded twice, without even a wax seal or a sealing spell. "Shang Qingfa, how daring." "Please relax, senior. I've already looked through it," said Gong Yishao. "Then relax my ass." However, I couldn't understand what it said. Shen Jingxue let out an internal sigh of relief. Good. It looked like he had misunderstood. Shang Qingfa wouldn't mess up that badly. In all likelihood, he'd used a secret code, so there would be nothing to fear even if someone did intercept it. Shen Jingxue shook open the paper with 2 fingers. After skimming it, his face turned green. After reading 2 lines, his face turned white. All sorts of colors bloomed and entwined over his cheeks in a lively display. He was speechless. The letter was written in English. No, not quite that. It was written in error-ridden Chinglish. The grammar was entirely Chinese, and any word Shang Qingfa didn't know was replaced by its pinyin equivalent. "Great Master Airplane shooting towards the sky. Did you not consider? What if I can't understand your crap-tier English?" Oh goodness, this is not going well. I'm stressed. After puzzling his way through the general gist of the thing, Shen Jingxue directed some energy to his hand. The paper broke into fragments and fell to the floor like June snow, exactly resembling his current tumultuous mental state. As it turned out, it was he who had underestimated Great Master Airplane shooting towards the sky. Oh? Underestimated, not overestimated? That sounds promising. Should I get my hopes up? I don't know. Okay. For peerless cucumbers' eyes only. Everything is set, and the preparations are complete. The location has not changed. It's just there was a small mishap with the time. In order to make the sun, moon, dew mushroom mature as soon as possible, I fixed up a little something to promote its maturation, but I accidentally overdid it. Right now, it's as mature as it will ever get, and it will rot in no more than a week. So I hope you can leave Huanhua Palace's water prison as soon as possible. Oh great! We love it when everything does not go to plan. Don't worry, it was only a bit of something like chemical fertilizer. So there shouldn't be any difference between you when you use the mushroom. Probably. This wasn't just going off recipe. Did the concept of recipes even exist for this guy? He'd used chemical fertilizer to ripen that all-natural, unpolluted life form fertilizer. There shouldn't be any difference when you use it. Was this sort of guarantee as trustworthy as the ones from used car salesmen? Gongi Shao looked around. Senior, are you done reading? If you are, please toss the letter into the lake to destroy it. Actually, yesterday, Luo Shishong gave orders that no one but him was allowed to enter and must leave as soon as possible so as to avoid being discovered and causing more complications. Shen Qingque grabbed Gongi Shao. Do me a favor? Gongi Shao responded. Go ahead and ask, as long as I... Shen Qingque didn't wait for him to finish saying, I'm able, before he sincerely asked, let me out. Gongi Shao was silent until he said with difficulty, Senior, I really can't do that. I have a reason to insist, Shen Qingque said solemnly. I swear that I don't intend to flee from the trial. After finishing my affairs, I will return to the water prison for my own violation to await judgment. If you don't trust me, we can take a blood oath. One could not renege on a blood oath. But in truth, after seeing to these affairs, it wouldn't matter whether Shen Qingque returned to Panhua Palace's water prison. So he was, in fact, running a scam. Oh my goodness. I certainly trust Senior, but wasn't detention in the water prison primarily your request? Gongi Shao said awkwardly. Exactly what could be so crucial that you would absolutely have to leave? If you're willing to explain, I can report to the sect leaders and seniors participating in the investigation. Chen Qingque was having some second thoughts. Gongi Shao was a Huanhua Palace disciple, and abetting the escape of a prisoner would be no small sin on any head it is laid upon. This was an upstanding youngster. Throwing him to the wolves would be rather unkind. Within the 7-day limit, there was bound to be more opportunities. Therefore, he changed his tone. Forget it. It wasn't anything serious. As he spoke, he struggled to collect all the paper fragments on the ground before tossing them into the lake to destroy the evidence. Because most of his body was bound by immortal binding cables, movement was immensely difficult. After he shifted a couple of times, the black robe slid off his body. Gongi Shao had originally bent down to help, but when he saw that black robe cast aside on the ground, he unintentionally looked up. His arms and legs went rigid at the sight. Shen Qingque looked at him askance. The white garment on his body had been ripped clean from his shoulder. It was obvious at a glance that someone had violently torn it apart with their bare hands. In addition, fragments of fabric that looked like they had been shredded by a whip had been left hanging from what remained. More than a few pale red scrapes were evident on the fair skin exposed by the damage. If one looked closely, they would also detect the faint traces of bruises on his neck that had yet to fade. I wonder how Gongi Shao's going to take that. Gongi Shao received a devastating shock to his worldview. Senior, are you sure you're all right? He asked in a trembling voice. No wonder Luo Binghe had forbidden anyone but him from entering the water prison, even if they had the authorization pass. Why he had even confiscated Peak Lord Shin's application. So it's like this, an insubordinate disciple, devoid of conscience, worse than a beast. Oh goodness. Gongi Shao inwardly cried tears of blood for Senior Shen. As for himself, Shen Qingque said blankly, Yes, I'm all right. Gongi Shao was shaken. How could Senior Shen have such a tranquil expression even in a moment like this? Shen Qingque finally tossed all the paper fragments into the lake. You shouldn't take the words I said just now to heart. Gongi Shao suddenly stood up, turned around and left. Shen Qingque's face filled with black lines. I say you shouldn't take it to heart and you just up and leave? Isn't that a bit brusque? But before an hour had passed, Gongi Shao returned again, carrying something in hand. He walked over to Shen Qingque, unwrapped the seals binding that object, and slashed it downward. With a white flash, the bindings around Shen Qingque's body abruptly loosened, and it felt like an electric circuit had been reconnected. He stretched his fingers. His spiritual energy was unmistakably back in operation and flowing smoothly. When he'd been imprisoned, he had been in the middle of a random, without-a-cure flare-up, but after 2 days of being tied up by immortal binding cables, the poison had unexpectedly been suppressed again. Was this following the same principle as fighting fire with fire, or how two negatives made a positive? That's an interesting thought. The immortal binding cables fell to the ground in pieces. Gumisha tossed over the object in his hands, and Shen Qingque reached out to catch it. Ya! Holding the sword, Shen Qingque was overjoyed and astonished. He looked over at Gumisha. I thought this was supposed to be with the old palace master. Even if I risk being punished by my masters, this junior cannot sit back and remain stoic while senior is disgraced, Gumisha said righteously. I trust you, Senior Shen. Please follow me. Shen Qingque was involuntarily overcome with a sense of helplessness. What's this? I keep feeling like he seems to have misunderstood something very important. But forget it. This is fine. All right, Shen Qingque said resolutely. Sure, the heavenly demon blood was still dormant within his body, and wherever he ran, Luo Binghe would always be able to locate him. But that knowledge didn't matter as long as Luo Binghe couldn't chase him there. Senior, can you walk? Oh my word! Can you walk? Oh. Well, if I had any doubts about where his mind went at when he saw Shen Qingque's states, I don't have them any longer. Oh goodness. Gong Yishao asked, deeply worried, Do you need me to carry? With a dark expression, Shen Qingque took a decisive stride and marched forward, using this action to prove that he could indeed walk, and walk very briskly at that. Gong Yishao started, then promptly followed close behind. Unexpectedly, when they stepped off the surface of the stone platform and onto the path, the water curtain that had been raised rumbled overhead, and water gushed down. Shen Qingque, who'd been running quickly, also braked quickly, lest he take the spray head-on. He stepped back onto the stone platform along with Gong Yishao, and the water curtain gradually stopped. It was basically deliberately stopping them from leaving. Wasn't this design a bit too intelligent? Gong Yishao suddenly understood. I forgot. Once the water prison has been activated, there must always be someone on the stone platform. If this person leaves or there isn't enough weight on the platform, the water curtain automatically reactivates, even if the mechanism has been shut off. That's actually really smart, unfortunately. In the past, he'd never had any experience with helping a prisoner escape, so naturally he hadn't remembered this. In other words, one person has to be left on the stone platform before the other can leave. Shen Qingque asked. Gong Yishao nodded. Then, you stay here. Gong Yishao was silent. Shen Qingque shook out his sleeves and headed towards the path. Behind him, Gong Yishao weakly raised his hand. Senior Shen, even though I am most willing to serve, if you don't have me to lead the way, I'm afraid you won't be able to get out. Shen Qingque looked back and added, Wait for me to return. Gong Yishao stood in place, stupefied. He had a mind to follow, but he was hindered by the fact that he had no way to leave the stone platform, so he could only stand there and wait. A short while later, he heard a muffled sound from outside, and Shen Qingque walked back up, dragging a person by the back of their collar. Oh! Yes. I approve, Shen Qingque, I approve. Shen Qingque rolled the still unconscious, pock-faced disciple onto the stone platform, patted Gong Yishao on the shoulder, and said, I happened to see this one on patrol and borrowed him for a bit. Let's go. I'm living. Oh, goodness. In reality, he hadn't just happened to see him. There had been 4 people on patrol. Shen Qingque had secretly hidden himself, and only after careful selection had he grabbed the mouthy fellow.
Just now, it had also occurred to Gong Yishao to grab a random disciple to use as a weight, but the idea had flashed by only indistinctly. Now that Chen Qingque had done it himself, meaning there was no need for Gong Yishao to personally knock out a fellow disciple, he breathed a sigh of relief. Oh, I love Gong Yishao so much. I didn't think I would, but I do. As they once more headed towards the outside, shoulder to shoulder, he saw Shen Qingque draw that black robe draped over his shoulders tighter, and a lump welled in his throat. He could only feel agonized. He was already reluctant to see Shen Qingque, the leader of a peak, be imprisoned and humiliated. Yet now Shen Qingque needed to depend on a piece of clothing from the one who'd assaulted him to cover his body and conceal the marks of that humiliation. How could he not lament in distress? I mean, he's not wrong in that regard. It didn't go as far as he seems to be assuming, but it was still a bad situation. Chen Qingque saw Gong Yishao's expression flicker. It looked like sympathy, but also indignation. He could only face turbulence with tranquility, and he kept his expression blank. Out of nowhere, Gong Yishao said, "Senior, please take it off." Shen Qingque stared. Huh? Without waiting for him to recover, Gong Yishao had already begun taking off his outer robe. Shen Qingque was just considering whether he should toss a spiritual blast at Gong Yishao to try and return him to his senses when Gong Yishao offered him the outer robe he'd removed with both hands. "Please, wear this." Oh my word. If Luo Binghe catches wind of this, the jealousy he experiences will be through the roof. Chen Qingque suddenly understood. Oh, so that was what he meant. Luo Binghe's clothes were black, but the clothes themselves matched the person. Like the male lead himself, they were sophisticated, luxurious yet understated. Obviously, Gong Yishao disapproved. Wearing such a robe would only draw attention. Yeah, Chen Qingque, that's it. But changing into a white robe that looked like it could belong to anyone would be more advantageous to their chance of escaping. Such attention to detail. I love him. I love them both. Oh goodness. They're a chaotic duo that I didn't know I needed. Chen Qingque resolutely removed Luo Binghe's robe and changed into Gong Yishao's. Before leaving, he thought for a moment, then took the time to fold Luo Binghe's robe. Only after this did he place it on the ground. Why is that making me happy? Oh my goodness. Navigation wasn't particularly difficult upon first leaving the water prison, but the farther they walked, the more Shen Qingque came to appreciate that Huanhua Palace's maze array was indeed exceptionally terrifying. They traveled through cave after cave, path intersecting with path, and every couple of steps they'd circle around and around, to the point that it made his head spin. Despite walking so close to Gong Yishao's back, Chen Qingque almost lost him quite a few times. If Gong Yishao hadn't known the assignments and schedules of the water prison staff like the back of his hand, who knew how many disciple guard patrols they would have run into? After an hour, they finally made it out of the underground water prison. They walked many kilometers more without stopping and entered Bailu Forest until they were about to cross the border of Huanhua Palace's territory. The water prison's alarm had yet to sound, meaning that no one had yet discovered that prisoner was gone. Luo Binghe's order forbidding all others from visiting the water prison had inadvertently greatly aided Shen Qingque's escape. Oh no. After a short rest, Shen Qingque said, "Young Master Gongyi, after this point, you needn't stay to send me off. Hurry back now while we're still undetected." After a pause, he added, "Within 7 days, go to Guanyu City. You'll definitely find me there." If that's the case, I won't accompany you any farther, Gong Yishao said. Even though I don't know what Senior intends to do about these future concerns, please be careful. And Senior, please don't worry about the sect's trial next month. It's as you said, those clean will remain clean no matter what. The sect leaders will obviously exonerate you. Oh no, he has so much faith in Shen Chue, and I just worry about it. Unable to help himself, Shen Chue laughed. First, his dark history was set in stone and couldn't be erased. Second, the trial next month had nothing to do with him. He immediately cupped his hands, carefree and satisfied. May we meet again. The road from Huanhua Palace's border to Huayu City ran through the most densely populated and economically developed stretch of the Central Plains. This also meant that an especially large number of the secular cultivation sects and influential families were located within the area. The cultivators of this world highly valued aerial defenses. Like in Jinlan City, they often set up aerial defense barriers over their territories. If an immortal sword or spiritual artifact flew through it above the speed limit, it would undoubtedly be discovered and reported to the sect's higher-ups. So we're going by foot again. I'm assuming that's what this is leading to. Obviously, traveling in this way would be like bombastically broadcasting his escape trajectory via megaphone. Shen Qingque flew part of the way and walked another without rest until he finally arrived at Huayu City the following night. His arrival timing was terribly unfortunate, as the festival celebrating the establishment of Huayu City was in full swing. The city was adorned with colored lanterns and would be brightly lit the entire night. Soaring dragons and lion dances filled the streets, the drums and music thunderous. People were packed together, vendor next to vendor, peddlers shouldering their poles as they slunk down every street. Practically everyone had poured out of their homes. I mean, wouldn't that technically mean it's easier for him to blend in? So I suppose it also just means that there's more people who might recognize him. Where? Even more unfortunate was that, on his arrival, dark clouds covered the moon. Without the support of sun or moonlight, the chances his plan would fail greatly increased. Anxious about the odds, Shen Qingque decided to wait for the time being. At most, one day. If after that day the clouds had yet to disperse, he couldn't afford to care anymore. If the chance of failure remained greater, so be it. The risk would still be better than clinging to an overripe sun-moon dew mushroom and crying about it. At that point, even if it was cooked and served with alcohol, it would just reek of fertilizer. Ugh. As Shen Qingque walked cautiously, he occasionally bumped into rowdy children and brushed past groups of laughing girls, and he felt, very slightly, that it really was a pity. If he weren't currently fleeing for his life, he would have liked to take a thorough tour of the city. Suddenly, several men, all dressed in clothes of the same color, were walking towards him, long swords slung over their backs. Each one held his head high and chest out. From a glance, one could tell they were arrogant disciples from a random sect. Though it sounded strange, the smaller and more random the sect, the more afraid their disciples would be that others didn't know they were cultivators. If they could have gotten away with it, they would have emblazoned their clothes with huge slogans. Shen Qingque turned his body in a natural manner and smoothly picked up a demon mask from the side. He placed it over his face, then openly and confidently walked towards them. At the festival, 6 out of 10 attendees were wearing masks. If you mixed in with them, you didn't have to fear drawing attention. Xiang, would that Shuya sword really sit around in the city, waiting to be captured? One man from the group asked. Before a sect sent out the warrant for his capture as one, how could it be fake? Okay, so his capture has been noted, unfortunately. Or his escape, sorry, not his capture. Didn't you see how many sects have sent people here to box him in? Keep an eye out. You saw Huanhua Palace's bounty too. Don't you want it? Myriad thoughts filled Shen Qingqi's mind. It turned out that, without his knowledge, he'd become a wanted criminal. It's no wonder Huanhua Palace put down such a large sum. What happened to them was really just awful. The most I did to them was knock out an insignificant disciple, Shen Qingqi thought. I didn't do anything else. So how did Huanhua Palace suddenly become the tragic victim? He wanted to keep listening, but they pulled farther and farther ahead, and the rush of people cut him off, so he could only give up. While he was mulling over whether he should find an abandoned residence to rest, he felt a sudden weight upon his leg. When he looked down, he saw a small child clinging to his thigh. The child unhurriedly raised his head. His face was pallid, like he was malnourished, but his eyes were both large and bright. They stared straight at Shen Qingqi as the boy clung to his thigh, unwilling to let go. Oh, goodness, okay. Shen Qingqi patted his head. Who's your family? Did you get lost? The small child nodded, and when he spoke, his voice was meek and sweet. I got lost. I'm just sorry, my brain just went to the fear that if they do know that he's missing, Luo Binghe could already be here somewhere, because they did say that he could track him via the blood in his system now. Hi. Yeah, this is kind of like my first time sort of experiencing it. Like I've experienced part of it, but not all. Okay. The child's appearance was naturally endearing, and it even seemed a little familiar. Is this Luo Binghe? Why do I get that feeling? It can't be, it can't be. So Shen Qingqi leaned over to pick him up, letting him sit on his arm. Who did you come here with? The child clung to his neck and pursed his lips. With Shizun. Was he some sect's young disciple? Then, if a grown-up came to look for him, Shen Qingqi was in for a real headache. But for some reason, the forlorn way the boy said Shizun stirred Shen Qingqi's pity down to the core. He just couldn't harden his heart and toss the child to the side of the road, leaving him to continue huddling miserably. He patted the boy's soft little behind. Your Shizun didn't look after you properly. How incredibly awful of him. If this is looking her, even though I don't think it can be, but if it is, that's so painful. Where did you get lost? Do you remember? The child giggled in his ear. I remember. Shizun personally threw me down himself, so how could I not? Oh no. That is starting to sound more like loving her. Half of Shen Qingqi's body went utterly cold. It was as if he held his arms. It was as if what he held in his arms wasn't the body of a young child, but a poisonous snake. A massive snake that had wound around his neck and bared its fangs, poised to bite and inject venom into him at any moment. He abruptly threw aside the person in his arms and turned around, his back covered in goosebumps. The fine hairs all over his body promptly stood straight up. The entire street was looking at him. The ones wearing masks, the ones not wearing masks. It was like they were suddenly all immobilized, holding their breaths and watching him. Is it part of his, part of Luo Binghe's ability to make Shen Qingqi hallucinate because of the blood in his body or something? The ones wearing masks were frightening, with their sinister, demonic visages. But the ones not wearing masks were even more panic-inducing. They didn't have faces. Shen Qingchu's instinct in that second was to place his hands on Shu Ya, but he shortly caught himself. He couldn't attack. This was what he'd once taught Lu Binghe. While within Meng Mo's barrier, to attack the people who appeared in the dream realm was to in fact attack your own self. Cold sweat dripped from Shen Qingchu's forehead. He had pretty completely failed to realize that he'd entered this barrier. To be fair, people never remembered when and how exactly a dream began. But he'd been fleeing. Surely he hadn't been so dull-witted as to fall asleep on the side of the road while running for his life. From behind him there came a tender voice. Shizun? Moments ago, when this voice had been by his ear, it had sounded clearly and utterly adorable and innocent, but when he listened to it now, it actually possessed some unspeakable, terrifying quality. Why didn't you want me anymore? The child form of Lu Binghe asked faintly from where he stood behind Shen Qingchu. Shen Qingchu decisively refused to turn his head and immediately took off. Guys, I'm stressed. Though he said that all these faceless people were watching him, no, he couldn't call it watching, because they didn't even have eyes. But their faces still turned in Shen Qingchu's direction, and he could indeed feel the weight of countless gazes upon him. Shen Qingchu pretended he couldn't see any of this, and charged straight ahead, thrusting aside anyone in his way. Suddenly, a hand intercepted his palm. He turned his head to look. Why am I so freaking scared right now? Though this hand was slim, it possessed terrifying strength, basically like an iron shackle. The 14-year-old Lu Binghe firmly gripped his wrist. On his face was not only the bruising that had never been allowed to heal, but an overflowing melancholy. Those pitch-black eyes stared right at him, almost within reach. You're still coming? Shen Qingchu tried 3 times before he finally flung off Lu Binghe, then pushed aside the crowd and continued to flee. First was a child, second was a youth. If the adult version came next, he really wouldn't be able to take it. But this street seemed to go on forever, and with no end in sight. After a sequence of small stalls on either side, faceless playing children and demon-masked girls appeared a second time. Shen Qingchu was finally certain this dream realm street was looping. Going forward was fruitless. Since neither forward nor backward would work, he'd blaze a different trail. Shen Qingchu looked left and right, then darted up to a liquor shop. Crimson lanterns hung high over the shop's doors. The red glow muted and beautiful, yet the wooden doors were tightly shut. Shen Qingchu pulled open the doors and had just walked inside when they slammed closed by themselves. Oh great, we love that. The interior of the house was dark, and a cold breeze blew through it. Rather than being the inside of a liquor shop, it felt more like he'd entered a cave. Shen Qingchu didn't think that this was unexpected. Dream realms couldn't be understood using common sense. Every door had the potential to lead anywhere. At this moment, a series of eerie noises drifted to his ear. They sounded like the intensely labored, incessant panting of a person close to death, whose lungs had been punctured, who was in terrible agony. Moreover, it didn't sound like only one person. Shen Qingchu snapped his fingers, flicking a flame forth from his fingertips, and aimed it towards the origin of those strange noises. The flame illuminated the scene in its entirety, leaving out not a single detail. Why do I think this is not going to be pretty? His pupils instantly shrank to pinpoints. Liu Qingge held Cheng Lian, the blade aimed at himself, and was stabbing it into his own chest. What the hell kind of nightmare is this? Okay, just give me a second. Ooh. Oh, okay, Dardor NXT loves her horror vibes. Indeed, she very much does. I should maybe not be reading this so late at night, but yeah, we'll see. I don't know why I was expecting this read along to not, or like the specific read along today to not be that intense. Don't know what gave me that idea. Body was stained with blood, large swaths covered in a deep and ghastly red. The wounds weren't just concentrated in one place, and a stream of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. It looked like he'd already stabbed himself with the sword, who knew how many times. Yet his expression was both furious and crazed. It was obvious he was delirious, in the midst of a chi deviation. Beneath the rays of dim yellow firelight, this picture was exceptionally horrifying. Shen Qingque momentarily forgot that this was still the dream realm and threw himself forward, wrenching Cheng Lian away. That sword had been stalked in the center of Liu Qingge's heart, and with only a light touch from Shen Qingque, fresh blood sprouted violently forth, filling his vision with red. Oh, that's grim. At that, Shen Qingque's mind cleared a little, and he backed up 2 steps, only to bump into another person. He jerked his head around. Liu Qinglian's head was lowered, gaze meeting his. Through their... Why am I struggling so much right now? Sorry. Though their gazes met, those 2 eyes were empty and devoid of light. From his throat to his chest, his 4 limbs and abdomen were all pierced with a forest of pitch-black arrows. Pierced with 10,000 arrows? All at once, Shen Qingque understood the meaning of these visions. These were their original deaths, the deaths that he had been meant to cause with his own hands. Shen Qingque couldn't stand it anymore. He far preferred being outside, getting aggressively stared down by a circle of faceless people, to this sort of thing. He backed up in the direction from which he'd come, and he managed to brush those wooden doors. Feeling as if he'd been granted amnesty, Shen Qingque kicked the doors open and rushed outside. His mind was a mess, his footsteps confused, as he tripped and staggered along, cutting a rather sorry figure. Every person on the street watched him in a deathly silence, and while he was disorientated, he crashed headlong into someone's chest. Is it gonna be Liu Binghe? It's almost definitely gonna be Liu Binghe, and I'm stressed. That person's hands swiftly came around to his back, gathering him in their arms. The other party was a little taller than him, slender and willowy, dressed in clothes as black as ink that exposed only a fair neck. Above that, a sinister mask covered their face. Shen Qingque hadn't yet spoken when a smiling voice came from above. Shizun, be careful. He had no need to lift the mask to know whose face lay underneath. At once, Shen Qingque began to struggle. The other party didn't hold him by force, so getting free wasn't difficult. Only after retreating several steps and maintaining a safe distance did he right himself. You created the city? Shen Qingque asked. Liu Binghe casually removed the mask. His expression looked like he was sad that they couldn't keep playing hide and seek. Correct. What does Shizun think? Shen Qingque slowly nodded. You truly deserve to be called Ming Mo's succeeding disciple. To be able to create an illusion this detailed, he feared it was nearly as good as the city Ming Mo had created to trap them in all those years ago. Furthermore, it had so accurately grasped his lurking fears. Originally, Lo Binghe's mood had seemed rather good, but on hearing these words, the smile on his lips faded. I'm not Meng Mo's disciple. Didn't you accept him as your master? Shen Qingque asked, slightly curious. Lo Binghe held his silence for a while, before he answered in a peeved tone, I didn't. All right then. If he didn't, he didn't. Shen Qingque didn't think there was any point of wasting time on this. Shizun, if you're willing to return of your own volition, you can ask for anything, Lo Binghe said. Are you offering a plea bargain? Asked Shen Qingque. So as long as I don't dissolve the blood mites within your body, it will be futile to flee. Oh, is that so? He smiled. Then, right now, why haven't you personally come to catch me? Lo Binghe stiffened, sparks flashing in his eyes. Oh, that's interesting. At this reaction, Shen Qingque became even more sure. Something has gone wrong with that sword of yours, right? He asked languidly. The heavens smiled down on me. After falling into the endless abyss, while within the stomach of a huge ancient beast, Lo Binghe had found a mystical sword that had been forged by a master demon blacksmith with an entire lifetime's worth of painstaking labor. The sword was called Shenmo, Heart Demon. The name alone tells you that it's something super dangerous, right? And that was a must. The stronger the spiritual artifact, the harder it was to control. Since ancient times, Shenmue had passed through the hands of more than 100 masters, and all had been blessed geniuses from various races. Yet despite this, none of them had been able to escape the same fate, and they had all died to this very blade, their own sword. Oh damn. Shenmue lashed back against its wielder. If you could make it submit, it was a formidable weapon in your hand. But if one day you were unable to control the sword's evil tendencies, you would become no more than another blood sacrifice to its hunger. I don't like that, because what if... Obviously, I would prefer to have a Lo Binghe that is not a killing monster. So if he stops being a killing monster, and he still is the owner of the sword, does that mean he's doomed to die? Only after starting the Demon Realm arc had the original Lo Binghe gone through his first bout of internal struggles wherein he narrowly escaped Shenmue's recoil. After that, for the sake of solving this problem, he'd begun a side plot that lasted 500 chapters. Oh my word, I would die. And involved collecting 8 or 9 more girls. But right now, with the plot in disarray, it seemed the recoil incident had also moved earlier. Shenmue's recoil was no joke. No wonder Lo Binghe hadn't given chase. He was busy secluding himself to recover, so he was unable to come capture Shen Qingque in person. Okay, well at least everything is making sense, I appreciate that. Suddenly, Lo Binghe grabbed Shen Qingque's shoulder and forcefully yanked. Rip? Why again? Lo Binghe's face was almost as dark as the bottom of a pit. Each word he spat out sounded like he'd first ground it between his teeth. Even if I can't come in person for now, Shizun shouldn't be too happy. That doesn't mean you should tear my clothes. Shen Qingque clutched the remaining fabric tightly and indignantly said, What are you doing? Is this your only method of humiliating others? It was clearly Shizun whom humiliated me first. Satisfaction points +50. Oh, the way the satisfaction points get just so randomly assigned is weirdly enjoyable. I don't know, it's so funny. You can add points for that too? Gross. Why does this feel so sick? When Loving Her's hand exerted force, the white robe's fabric disintegrated into pieces, drifting away in the wind. His anger still unappeased, he pressed towards Shen Qingque. His expression made Shen Qingque fear there would be no end to this. He'd never known Loving Her to have crazy clothes-ripping tendencies, but of course he couldn't just sit there and resign himself to it. They exchanged 10 or so blows, quick and nimble. Loving Her could obviously easily assume the upper hand, but like a cat playing with a mouse, he patiently engaged Shen Qingque in close combat. Ooh, I don't like that. That's stressful. Shen Qingque's movements were swift, but it seemed that in Loving Her's eyes he was always one step behind. When he lashed out with a palm strike, Loving Her evaded within a hair's breadth every time, calm and unhurried. Then, as if reciprocating a polite gesture, he perfunctorily returned the blow. But isn't that perhaps because they're in a dream realm that he's technically in control of, so he wouldn't be threatened or be able to be threatened? On top of that, the system was being extremely annoying, with satisfaction points notifications ringing without end. Oh my word, this book is calling us out. Plus 20, plus 30, plus 50, etc. The infernal racket flooded Shen Qingque's brain. After several back and forths, it was Shen Qingque's turn to wear a dark face. Where are you aiming? Are you messing with me? Shouldn't the goal of a fight be defeating the other party? This wasn't a fight. This couldn't even be considered sparring. It was basically harassment. Oh no. As he thought this, Shen Qingque's concentration slipped, and he used too much force, falling into Loving Her. This, Loving Her didn't evade at all, and he let Shen Qingque crash into his arms with a thud. His voice carried laughter, like his mood had risen once more. Shizun taught me this maneuver himself. When it comes to force, there is a time for restraint and a time for release, and one must above all else avoid losing one's balance. How could you forget that yourself? Why is this just flirting all the way? This is not even dangerous at this point. At this moment, Shen Qingque's mind was bombarded with a colorful explosion of little beast ad nauseum. Hell, this maneuver really was something he taught Loving Her. He still remembered that lesson, not long after Loving Her had moved out of the woodshed. Though he was blessed with a ton of raw talent and had come up with the fighting style through random experimentation, other than a handful of cutting and stabbing maneuvers every new disciple knew, he had known absolutely nothing about any high-level techniques. After watching him practice a series of sword, palm, and foot techniques, Shen Qingque had held his forehead for a long time, while Loving Her awaited his evaluation by his side, as anxious as he was nervous. Shen Qingque had been unable to bear hurting him, and after a long while had finally squeezed out a single line. Pragmatic and quite flexible. In the name of correcting Loving Her's more tragic habits, Shen Qingque had put in a great deal of painstaking effort and given him daily private instruction. He had been unable to understand why a nudge wasn't enough. Given Loving Her's intelligence and comprehension, Shen Qingque shouldn't have needed to tell him anything more than once. But in reality, Loving Her was incredibly stubborn. He would immediately forget his lessons, no matter how tirelessly taught, and always use too much force. He had slammed into Shen Qingque's arms who knew how many times, until Shen Qingque finally became angry. Even then, even back then, he was taking his chances with Shen Qingque. Really? Oh my word, okay. I did not see that coming. Are you doing this on purpose? Unable to help himself, he had slapped the back of Lobinger's head, neither heavy nor light, and shouted, "How is this anticipating and defending against your enemy? You're basically throwing yourself into their arms." Oh, goodness. Only after this did Lobinger, face fully flushed, finally start practicing in earnest. He no longer dared to make mistakes so carelessly. But in the present, Lobinger was the one lecturing Shen Chu on his incorrect stance. What nonsense is this? Shen Chu felt like his dignity as a master had been challenged. He was about to counterattack when Lobinger's hand trailed downward, following the line of his spine. Goosebumps exploded down Shen Chu's back in its wake. Oh damn. Okay. That I was not expecting. Okay, we are on page 130. And I think I'm just quickly going to take my 10-minute break before we get back for the final 50 minutes. So I'll see you guys at 10 past. Okay, we are back. Let me quickly twist was back up again. So, just a quick mention. I checked now with regards to the page count that we are on and still need to get to. So we're on, as I said, 130, and there are, I think, 302 pages. So we have 172 pages left, which means we should be finishing this up in about 4 more live streams. And if I have my way, which I don't often do, but if I do, then we'll be having 2 live streams for each novel next week. No, not next week, the week after next week, sorry. But yeah, we shall see how that goes. Yeah, okay, we can get going again. Hold on. Moving her, he said through clenched teeth. Satisfaction points plus 100. Congratulations. Congratulations, my ass. Loathing her again plucked away a length of her shredded white cloth. Seeing Shizun in this robe makes me awfully unhappy. I knew the frickin' jealousy would come back. Ha. It would be better to rip it all off. Doesn't that mean he won't stop until I'm 100% naked? Even if you hate me, there's no need to take it out on this robe, Shen Qingque said. Moreover, it's Gong Yishao's. That is not gonna make it better, Shen Qingque. That might even make it worse, actually. Loathing her's face fell. Shizun's the one who truly hates me. You're unwilling to associate with even a scrap of my clothing. Why? Why were 2 grown men neurotically discussing a piece of clothing while surrounded by staring eyes? Good question. Loathing her, are you actually the sensitive type? I even patted your robe clean and folded it for you. What more do you want? It can't be that you wanted me to hand wash and return it to you personally. More like he wanted you to wear it and never take it off unless it's for purposes that we shall not name. Shen Qingque thought, his eyes shifting erratically. What is Shizun thinking? Loathing her asked at the sight. He added coldly, if it's about Gong Yishao, let me advise Shizun. You needn't think about him anymore. Oh no, what did you do to Gong Yishao? An ominous feeling rose in Shen Qingque's heart, and he asked in a forceful voice, what happened to Gong Yishao? Plot-wise, Gong Yishao being banished, forced to defend a desolate regional border, and deprived of any future prospects, was only supposed to be happening after Loathing her and the little palace mistress slept together. But now the plot was jumbled to the point where even airplane shooting towards the sky, the story's own father, would no longer recognize it. So naturally any scenario could have moved up. Chen Jingque had yet to hear Loathing her's answer when the faceless people nearby stirred. Originally they had only vacantly stood there, watching blankly as if they were mentally infirm or doing their own thing. Now they started to steadily gather around him. Shen Qingque was squeezed into the center of the crowd, but he couldn't directly blast them away. He looked again towards Loathing her, whose brows were tightly furrowed, hand pressed to his temple, too preoccupied to notice anything else, as if he were enduring a mental assault. Shen Qingque had the sudden epiphany. In all likelihood, Shenmo had taken the chance to lash out and was trying to strike at Loathing her's mind. As Loathing her could no longer spare the energy to maintain the barrier, the dream realm was beginning to fall into chaos. Oh, that's interesting. If Shen Qingque didn't leave now, then when would he get the chance? Loathing her couldn't expend any more energy to stop him, so as long as Shen Qingque faced another illusion and overcame the related fears buried within his heart, he would be able to destroy the failing barrier. Just like that, Shen Qingque left, Loathing her's head hurt like it was splitting open. but he was unable to move. He could only yell, "I dare you to take another step." This is painful. I'm getting freaking Erha flashbacks for some reason. Chen Qingque took 10 steps. Afterward, he turned his head. "How's that?" Loving her looked like he was about to cough up blood. He ground out each word one by one. "You just wait and see." Chen Qingque's gaze didn't falter. He spoke coldly and loftily. "Goodbye." "You think I'll wait just because you told me to? I'm not an idiot." To the side, Shen Jingque glimpsed another shop. He kicked open the doors and leapt through them. Whatever appeared this time, he was absolutely certain he could face it calmly. At the very least, his chance of success was higher than when facing Luo Binghe. The door closed behind him, and it was like the clamor outside had been severed away by a sharp knife. Within a split second, it was all deathly silent. Chen Jingque held his breath and waited, soundless. After a long while, it was as if someone had lit a candle, and his surroundings slowly, flickeringly lightened. Chen Jingque looked down, and he came face to face with a countenance that was both foreign and familiar. Before him knelt a fragile-looking youth. The boy wore coarse clothes and was crouched bent over on the ground. It was a crestfallen pose. His hands were tightly tied with a thick, rough rope. Though his face was deathly pale, his eyes were full of life. Chen Jingque met his gaze, unwavering. This categorically wasn't Shen Qingque's memory, but this face was indeed exactly like his. The only thing that was missing was the polish of time and cultivation. Instead, it possessed the inexperience of youth. Sorry, I'm struggling. Let me just grab a little bit of water. This was Shen Qingque. Yet it wasn't Shen Jingque. Oh! Damn, okay. If he had to be obvious about it, this was Shen Jie. Shen Jingque abruptly sat up on a wooden slab. After a startling awake, he took in his surroundings, and only then did he realize that he was lying within an abandoned residence. The sky was already bright, white light streaming through the worn-out window and cracks in the rice paper. Then he remembered. The night before, he'd wandered at random through the festival, and not long into his wander, had really found an old uninhabited house. He'd originally only intended to rest a little, but by accident he had carelessly fallen asleep, allowing Luo Binghe to catch him within the dream realm. As Shen Jingque considered the illusion he'd seen before the dream realm collapsed, he couldn't help but sink into thought. Though his and the original Flavor's souls counted as two different people, in the end, he was using someone else's body, so it made sense that there would at least be some influence from the prior owner. What he'd seen in the dream had likely been the original Shen Jie's childhood memories. In a way, then, he had cheated his way out, because those memories had absolutely no hold on the current Shen Jingque. Thus, he had been able to easily and effortlessly break free from them. Ah, okay, that does make a lot of sense. Although, in retrospect, Shen Jingque thought this fairly suspicious. The Shen Jin within the dream had been tied up, so it assumed it was a memory from the time when Shen Jie was still held by human traffickers. However, he had been in a room decorated with a soft carpet, numerous cabinets, for keeping valuables, and the walls hung with calligraphy, which had lent it a noble air. It hadn't looked like a criminal's den, but rather had unquestionably been a rich man's study. Oh. In other words, it looked like Shenjie had not been as doted upon as the Chu estate. What? In other words, it looked like Shenjie had not been as doted upon at the Chu estate as Chu Haitang claimed. Shenjin Chu hopped up from the bare wooden couch and unconsciously felt up his form. At least all his clothes were still there, but even though his clothes were intact, he didn't really want to wear them anymore. Though they were on his body, he had an ominous feeling that they would be ripped off at any moment. Oh goodness, he's having, PTSD from that. Before he'd gone too far through the streets, Shen Qingque discovered that more than a few people had poured into Hua Yu City upon receiving notice of the warrant for his capture. Though many of the cultivators put on an act and didn't wear the set colors, while disguised as common people, when they sat down at a roadside stand, their postures were entirely different from an ordinary person's. Shen Qingque felt that it was too dangerous to go as he was, so he found a corner, smeared his face with dirt, and haphazardly stuck on some whiskers. After making all these preparations, he carefully returned to the street. When he glanced up at the sky, he saw the clouds were thin, like they were slowly retreating. If nothing went awry, noon today would be the optimal time. When he looked down again, a slender, snow-white silhouette flashed through the crowd in front of him, fast and light, their profile outstandingly handsome. Liu Qingge. His hired thug was here. Oh goodness. Shen Qingque's eyes brightened, but just as he was about to chase after Liu Qingge, a delicate shout erupted from a nearby tavern. What are you saying with your filthy mouth? This voice was clear, delicate, and entirely familiar. Shen Qingque unconsciously paused mid-step, the scene drawing his gaze. Right after, a sequence of crashes shook the air, and all the passersby cast glances as well. Is it Ning Ying Ying? I wonder. Another young woman humphed and said spitefully, What, you have the guts for crime, but won't let others talk? No wonder Tangchong Mountain produced a degenerate like Shen Qingque. Everyone in the sect must be eager to bury their shame, especially Qingjing Peak. Huh, unfortunately for you, everyone knows what kind of thing he is. You think you can hide it? What a venomous tone. The young woman who'd spoken first jumped in to refute her right away. Shizun absolutely isn't that kind of person who'd do something like this. Don't you dare slander him. What young girl would even now speak up for him like so? Who could it have been other than Ning Ying Ying? Yay! I love that she's become her own person. She's not just loathing her as wife number 5000. Ming Fan's voice carried into the street as well. We were only polite to you out of respect for the old palace master. You ought to be more polite as well. Though Shen Qingque had wanted to go looking for Liu Qingge, having urgent matters to attend to, the strange atmosphere made him hesitate for a second. In the end, afraid the Qingjing Peak disciples would be at a disadvantage, he stayed for a moment and ducked to the side of the building to hide and watch. There were two distinct camps in this tavern. One side was led by Ming Fan and Ning Yinyi, while a crowd of Qingjing Peak disciples stood behind them, their every face filled with displeasure. The little palace mistress stood in front of the other side, her hands on her hips, as she faced her opponents with a cold scowl. The Huanhua Palace disciples behind her already flashed their blades, their glares even more full of fury. Oh, I forgot. So she's the one that was rude to Shen Qingque in the prison, right? Two young women, one lovely and delicate, the other with gorgeous features, gracefully faced off. Even if the air was filled with crackling, sizzling sparks, the scene was still incomparably easy on the eyes. Lubinghe was setting fires in his backyard again. No, even Qingjing Peak's disciples were involved, and they had challenged Huanhua Palace. This was the real enemies meeting on a narrow road. Shen Qingque could guarantee that if he left the scene and walked away right this instant, Qingjing Peak would definitely suffer more casualties, and greatly. Remember, this little palace mistress was domineering to the point that other than loving her, there was no one in the world she wouldn't dare hit. Injury and crippling strikes were common dishes on her menu of retaliation. The little palace mistress humphed. Not that kind of person? Then tell me, why would he flee in fear of punishment? And he did that sort of thing. As she spoke, she clenched her teeth in hatred, the rims of her eyes going red. Shizun was never convicted. What do you mean, fleeing in fear of punishment? Ning 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 shot back. And there is still no final consensus on who committed those deeds. Our Tangchung Mountain never blamed your Huanhua Palace for being gullible and over-suspicious, or for insisting on imprisoning our Qingjing Peak's peak lord in your water prison without regard for the truth. If not for you, things wouldn't have blown up into the situation today. Ning Ying Ying scoring points left, right, and center. Thank you. That is satisfying. The reason for this beep fight wasn't the male lead, but Shen Qingque. Shen Qingque wiped his brow. By what merit does this humble Shen deserve this? At the same time, the dark cloud over his heart that he'd been unable to wipe away grew even darker. This argument just made it more evident that after he left, something had happened at Huanhua Palace, and these new grudges and old debts had all fallen on his head. The little palace master flew into a rage, though to tell the truth, Shen Qingque felt that she was always in a state of rage. So you're saying that our Huanhua Palace only has ourselves to blame? She snapped. Tangchong Mountain is so impressive, so high up and domineering, so arrogant and unbridled, that not only do you refuse to apologize, you have the gall to be so brazen towards the victims. With this kind of behavior, you still have the face to call yourselves the #1 major sect? Preposterous. Ning Ying Ying curled her lips. Tangchong Mountain has already been acknowledged by the masses as the #1 major sect. Whether you accept that fact doesn't matter. Moreover, who came at us first and acted brazen? Our Qingjing Peak was eating a peaceful meal in this tavern. What's your justification for coming up and cursing us out? First saying that you want our whole Qingjing Peak to kneel to you, kowtow and apologize for our offenses, then saying that our entire Tangchong Mountain should be buried together. Exactly who was being preposterous? I don't want to be rude, but I'm kind of agreeing with Ning Ying Ying here. It does sound ridiculous, because even if something seriously bad happened, unless it's like her father, which it might be, like, who knows, I have a very bad track record with trying to guess plot holes. Plot points, not plot holes. But unless it's her father, how is it something that she personally should be apologized to for? Like, it just seems a little bit ridiculous. But I understand that it's also like old-timey and the sense of responsibility was much larger. like you weren't just responsible for yourself, but for your entire clan's actions. Where am I now? Exactly who is being preposterous? One New City is not your Hanwha Palace's background. Yeesh, I'm struggling, sorry. Backyard. Or are you saying that the entire world is your house? Nini Ying's voice was delicate and crisp, and Shen Qingque was flabbergasted to hear it. How had the innocent, naive, and silly Ying Ying become so good at catfights? And why was the little palace mistress acting like a beast not properly leashed in her cage, biting at everyone she laid eyes on? Our Qingjing Peak has always cleaved to etiquette, Ning Ying continued. Shizun was a proper teacher and said not to bicker with foul-mouthed little children. Ooh! This is the only reason we've tolerated you thus far. Are you finished? If you are, then leave. Don't get in the way of our meal. I can't eat while looking at your face. Oh goodness. After she spoke, she picked up a cup of tea from the table and splashed it at the other girl's feet. Oh, there's gonna be war. The little palace mistress didn't dodge fast enough, and a few drops of tea splashed the hem of her dress. You! She screeched. You shrew! Ming Fan couldn't take it anymore. Throwing aside his chopsticks, he sneered. Don't think we're afraid of you just because you're the old palace master's daughter. After all, you're just a little girl relying on her daddy. Neither your seniority nor your cultivation are worth anything. Though when it comes to your ability to annoy, you're first rate. Wow. Wow. Shrew? The way I see it, you're a bigger shrew than anyone else here. You've lost every last shred of Huanhua Palace's face. Shen Jingque was shocked. Qingjing Peak's disciples had always been so meek in front of him. They wouldn't even dare fart. If he told them to feed the chickens, they dare not walk the dogs too. If he told them to make rice, they dare not make congee. Yet it turned out that they were actually quite the smack talkers when let loose. Why am I enjoying this so much though? I feel like I'm watching a gossip thing play out. The little palace mistress's face went white with anger. She'd heard Qing Wang Yue say that the soft, bewitching little girl had been sect siblings with loathing her for many years, as well as childhood friends and innocent playmates. All at once, envy and hatred flooded forth from her, and she suddenly raised her hand, a black shadow shooting out from her sleeve like a poisonous snake. Oh no. But also, like, to hell with you being jealous and, like, being willing to injure someone that you're jealous of just because you're jealous. Hell, she has a new whip. When the other customers in the tavern saw that it was finally coming to blows, they left at top speed. Although, as they passed Shen Jingque, their expressions were unperturbed, like this was nothing strange. It seemed that the residents of Huayu City had long since grown accustomed to this sort of scene. The waiter even aptly stuck a bill on the post before he walked out. That's first-rate waitering, in my opinion. The little palace mistress was the old palace master's beloved daughter. Her martial skills were the product of his hands-on teaching, and her weapons were far from ordinary in quality. The whip strike swift and fierce. Meanwhile, Ning Ying was the beloved youngest Shimei, who was pampered by the entirety of Qingjing Peak. She very rarely encountered danger and had virtually no real battle experience. Her sword waved back and forth, and though she warded off the attacks, a keen eye could see she was having trouble. Aww. Well, I hope that after this she goes and, like, puts even more work into her training and that she fully owns this woman later on. I love how Scum Villian Self-Saving System is MXGX's most funny book out of the three. I don't know, I have such a hard time comparing all of them because they're all so similar and yet so different at the same time. I can't help but love all of them in different ways. But yeah, it is, nonetheless, it's absolutely hilarious. Um, where am I now? Oh, for his part, Ming Fan wanted to aid her, but he couldn't get past the circle of the iron web stance and could only fret helplessly. Changing to assess the situation, then casually plucked a green leaf from the flower pot by his foot, which he sent flying. The fragile green leaf was filled with spiritual energy. Oh, this is giving me like flashbacks to his first encounter with loving her after he transmigrated. The fragile green leaf was full of the spiritual energy. When it collided with the iron web, there was a piercing crash of something hard on metal. The little palace mistress was unable to see what had gone wrong, but she felt the space between her finger and thumb go numb before her whip slipped from her hand and flew away. Nini Ning also startled. She'd been about to meet another attack with a sword, but when she saw that the little palace mistress had no weapon with which to block, she hurriedly pulled back, afraid of really stabbing her. But the little palace mistress had no similar mercy, and her reaction was super fast. The second her weapon left her hand, she reversed the momentum of her arm and turned it into a slap. A smack. Ningy Ning held her face, her head turned to the side. How? The 5 fingerprints standing out on Ningy Ning's face and the cheek already swollen on one side went to show that the attack had been utterly ruthless. Shen Qingqu's heart ached in terrible distress. You dare hit a disciple who even I've never touched? However, at the sight of Ning Ning's pretty face made lopsided, one side swollen, one side smooth, and all over tremendously unsightly, the little palace princess... Oh, sorry. My bad. That was a Freudian slip, I guess. Palace mistress was enormously satisfied and felt she had vented her resentment, and I resent her for that. She rubbed her wrist, raised her chin, and laughed. If your Shizun wouldn't teach you, then let this palace mistress do it. Lesson 1. One must consider propriety when speaking. Shouldn't you also consider propriety when speaking? Who the hell are you trying to teach my disciples in my place? Ming Fan drew his sword. You dog, you've gone too far. Let's go all out. The Qingjing Peak disciples couldn't take it any longer. Their youngest Shimei had been hit. How could they just let it go? They yelled and drew their swords, their blades gleaming with dazzling light. Shen Qingque was trying to figure out how to teach the little palace mistress a lesson without inciting greater bloodshed or exposing his location as quickly as possible, when he suddenly noticed that within the crowd of Huanhua Palace disciples, one person was behaving most strangely and suspiciously. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder in what way. Shen Qingque observed that person for a few seconds, after which his heart thumped. Not good, he thought silently. It would no longer be so easy to slip away. What the hell does that mean? Oh no, I'm stressed. Okay. Oh no. Chapter 8, Death. That does not sound promising. At first glance, this disciple looked rather ordinary. They were mixed in with the crowd of Panhua Palace disciples, hunched over and huddled close, gaze flickering around. Shen Qingque only noticed him because his face was one color, his neck another, and his hands yet two more different hues. Furthermore, within this agitated mob, where everyone's blood was running hot, he didn't draw his sword or cry out for a fight, nor did he glare at offending parties with furious eyes. Instead, he brushed back and forth through the Huanhua Palace disciples, with his head down, looking just like a pickpocket, taking advantage of the ruckus. As far as Shen Qingque knew, only one type of person acted like this. I don't know what it means. While Ming Fan was mid-clash, sword ringing and clanging, he looked back and cried, "Xiao Shimei, Shimei, how are you?" Ning Ying Ying had halted for a while, like the slap had stunned her silly. Now she finally came back to her senses. Her face was half red, half white, expression furious and eyes teary, but she brandished her sword to fight back. She'd suffered this humiliation because she'd been momentarily soft-hearted. This time, she would show no mercy whatsoever. Oh, and I like her having shown mercy. It's just a pity that the other person took advantage. The shop's interior descended into a massive bowl. To the side, Shen Qingque saw an old cat lazily curl its tail, licking its fur in the sunlight. He scooped it up with a single hand and tossed it into the tavern. Surprised, the old cat screeched and darted back and forth between the two fighting camps. Shen Qingque lowered his head and followed it, slipping into the circle of battle. Once the strange person had mysteriously pushed into the fray, both sides paused. Afraid to harm an innocent, Ning Ying Ying hesitated slightly. But the little palace mistress didn't have such reservations. Picking her whip back up, she lashed out as before. Shen Qingque chased the old cat back and forth through the hall, calling the name he'd given it on the spot. In the midst of this chaos, Ning Ying Ying's hands were obviously tied, especially as she was afraid to make a careless move. Yet she kept feeling as if someone was lifting her elbow, then like someone was pushing her shoulder. It was as if even when she didn't move her sword, it still danced, throwing off silvery light. Suddenly, two smacks rang out, and the little palace mistress held her face, dumbstruck and petrified like a wooden chicken, frozen on the spot. That's an expression I haven't heard before. These two slaps had been much louder and sharper than the one she had delivered to Ning Ying Ying's face. Everyone in both camps had seen Ning Ying Ying's arms flying, slapping first with one hand then the other, giving little palace mistress two smacks in the face. In tacit agreement, they all stopped where they were. Ming Fang cheered, "Xiao Shimei, nice hit." "No, that actually wasn't me," Ning Ying Ying said weakly. "Don't be scared, it's already done," Ming Fan said encouragingly. "Everyone knows she started it. You were considerate enough not to hurt her." And she responded with a sneak attack. "Serves her right." "No, but it really wasn't her, and I'm scared that now it's going to turn out worse." The crowd of Qingjing Peak disciples agreed, one after another. The little palace mistress's tears glistened. You dared to hit me? Not even my daddy ever hit me." And it shows. Like, I'm not condoning violence. I'm just saying it seems like she was never disciplined in any way, shape, or form. "No, it really wasn't me." "It was you," Ming Fan cut in, scoffing. "Remember, whenever Qingjing Peak's disciples are bullied, we must return in twofold. If we don't hit back, we'll betray all of Shizun's lessons." Shen Qingque internally cheered together with the disciples. Good boy Ming Fan had earnestly taken his teachings to heart. Oh goodness. Yes, grudges must be repaid in just this way. You say that until Lo Binghe tries to repay a grudge, and then you're gonna be very sorry about that sentiment. Steadily, Shen Jingzhi slipped into the ground of Steadily, Shen Qingzhi slipped into the group of Huanhua disciples and finally caught that old cat, which was still howling and screeching. Regardless of how stupid a person might be, they could still see that something was off with him. While cupping his two red, trembling, cumbersome-looking, swollen cheeks, the little palace mistress glared at him, filled with resentment. "Hey, who exactly are you? Who would dare mess with me like this?" The Huanhua Palace disciples surrounded him, yelling, "The palace mistress is asking you a question." Chen Qingzhi bent over and released the cat. Then he straightened and pointed to the disciple who stood hunched and lurking in the back. "Instead, why don't you ask, who exactly is he?" All at once, every one of those gazes focused on that person. The little palace mistress was still in a rage, so at first she only gave the indicated disciple a sideways glance, but the more she looked, the stranger she found him. Leaving Shen Jingzhi alone for now, she turned to the odd disciple and said suspiciously, "Who are you? What are you doing dressed like that? Are you really from Huanhua Palace? Why have I never seen you before? Nice distraction." The disciple mumbled but couldn't manage to reply. The little palace mistress turned to her subordinates. "What about you? Do you recognize him?" Realizing things weren't looking good, the disciple made an eerie sound, which made everyone turn their blades on him. "Don't get close," Shen Jingzhi warned with a raised voice. At the same time, he plucked another leaf, then flicked his wrist and sent it forth. This time, both Ning Ying and Ming Fan saw the way the leaf flew, and they balked. Enveloped in a sword-glarious glow, the leaf pierced through the air and sliced open the strange disciple's outer robes, cleaving through his clothes and revealing the skin underneath. Why am I thinking back to what was the terrible creatures that caused the death in the other city, in the merchant city? The sowers? Oopsie. At this, it was like everyone had seen a ghost, and they backed up several steps. Some went even further, shrieking as they leapt straight out of the tavern. Scarlet-colored skin. Oh, damn, I wish I was wrong. Ugh. It was in perfect accord with Shen Jingzhi's guess. To his knowledge, only one type of entity held themselves with this posture, a sower disguised as a normal person. Only the usual exposed parts of the sower's skin had been painted to resemble the hue of an ordinary person's, and so the sower's cover was blown on the spot. As such, it decided it had nothing to lose, and rushed forth with a yell, eyes bloodshot. These disciples were young juniors, so most of them hadn't gone on the recent excursion to Jinlan City. Therefore they had only heard of this monster and never seen it. Now that a real one had appeared before them, and one that was madly grabbing at whoever it saw at that, they were all scared senseless. This is a disaster. When the sorrow threw itself towards a Qingjing Peak disciple, Shen Jingzhi flashed between them and planted a foot in the sorrow's chest, sending it flying through 2 tables and spewing fresh blood everywhere. He turned his head to yell at the group, "Hurry up and leave." Instead, Ning Ying latched on to him, crying and laughing. "Shizun? Is it you? Shizun? No way, my face is covered in dirt and whiskers, you can't still recognize me." Chen Jingzhi was very slightly moved. However, in this kind of situation, choosing not to leave and on top of that staying behind to be a burden, and moreover calling out his true identity despite disguise. As expected, she was still dumb. We love you, Ning Ying Ying, but you still have a lot of work to do before you can be a safe companion in a time of crisis, it seems. When the sorrow tenaciously threw itself towards them again, refusing to relent, Shen Jingzhi pushed Ning Ying away with a hand as gentle as a spring. Then, with the other hand as harsh as winter, he flicked a fire technique at the enemy. It didn't hit. No, the fire didn't even come out. Oh no! The fountain of blood that had remained dormant and hidden in Shenjingqi's throat for many years once more began to stir. He'd had enough of this without a cure, the poison that just loved dropping the ball at key moments. He snapped his fingers continuously over and over, but not a single flame sprang forth. Like a lighter out of lighter fluid, he clicked away, but there were no sparks no matter how he snapped. While Shenjingqi became flustered, the Soa lunged and latched onto his thigh. Shenjingqi was struck speechless. I mean, doesn't he have Lobingher's blood in his body, so technically the Soa can't do anything to him? Or is that not how that works? He unthinkingly raised his misfortune-plagued right hand. Naturally, he could already detect 3 red patches happily taking root and growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Not fair. Why am I infected so fast every time? Perhaps his rage and sorrow alchemized into a fuse, because with his last snap, an explosive burst of fire finally ignited between his fingers. With a kick, Shenjingqi sent the Sura clinging to his thigh flying, and he struck downward with a palm alight with raging flames. The Sura was engulfed in a blaze of fire and a series of horrible shrieks. Ning Ying and Ming Fan tearfully sandwiched Shenjingqi on his left and right. Shizun! The other Qingjing Peak disciples were about to join in, but they quickly retreated under Shizun's go outside and run 500 laps glare. Since his disguise was already a wash, Shenjingqi scrubbed and wiped at his face until he recovered his original appearance. Was anyone infected? He asked. Then, with a heartfelt tone, he finally said a line he always dreamed of saying. Hurry and take some medicine. You must not stop taking your medication. One male and one female voice, one high and one low, sobbed into his ears. Shizun, we finally found you. Shizun, this disciple missed you so much it hurt. Shenjingqi hadn't even replied when a cold feeling laced down his back. He pushed aside his 2 disciples and sent Shuya flying out from the folds of his robes. With a clang, his blade blocked the little palace mistress's refined iron whip. If the little palace mistress could have been considered only temporarily enraged during the recent altercation with Qingjing Peak, then this time her actions truly brimmed with killing intent. She hacked away with the short whip in her hand, like it was a knife or an axe, every move vicious and desperate. Are you mad? Shenjingqi asked bluntly. Where does all this rage come from every day? He had long wanted to ask that question. You wicked villain, said the little palace mistress shouted. Return the lives of my Shishong and Shijie. At first, Shenjingqi thought that she once again grieved the Huanhua Palace disciples who died during the Immortal Alliance conference. He would never have guessed what the little palace mistress screamed next. Just because Ma Shishong said some harsh things to you while you were being imprisoned, he died so horribly, so horribly. Oh, great. Did the idiot try and walk off the pavilion on his own and, was cooked or whatever? I should not be that cruel because it does sound like he died, but I'm just not happy with the fact that it's very clear that Shenjingqi is now being blamed for it. Who's Ma Shishong? Could it be that nasty, sarcastic, pock-marked guy? This Shen didn't take a single life when leaving Huanhua Palace. He said, so why are you telling me that he died horribly? He then turned to his disciples to whisper, he really died? How horrible was it? He really did die, Liu Fan answered, also quiet. It was utterly, utterly horrible. His entire body was green and decayed. They said it was a highly toxic, demonic poison. It couldn't have been loathing her, right? Toxic demonic poison? That very much sounded like loathing her's handiwork. Cooking is useless, said Little Palace Mistress. Today, for the deaths of my Huanhua Palace disciples, I absolutely must make you pay with your life. This Shen has never been good with poison, and there are hundreds upon hundreds of ways to kill your Huanhua Palace's disciples, Shen Jingque countered. Why would I choose the most cumbersome strategy? I did indeed escape from the prison, but how can you prove I killed them? Then can you prove you didn't kill them? A Huanhua Palace disciple shouted. It's not guilty until proven innocent. It's innocent until proven guilty. You potato. Oh my word. If Shen Jingque didn't untangle this, he was afraid that in the future, the two sects wouldn't ever be able to let the matter rest. He deliberated a little, then probed further. What does your esteemed sect head disciple Gong Yishao have to say about this matter? The little palace mistress's eyes went wide. The tears that had originally stopped started to fall once more. You still mention Gong Yishao? She raised her whip and pointed it at Shen Jingque. You think that just because he's dead and can't testify, you can use him however you... No! No, 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 no. Please tell me there's some kind of misunderstanding and he's not actually dead. I mean, I know this is MXTX. She's not afraid of killing characters, but still. Shen Jingque felt like he'd been struck by lightning. He caught her whip mid-strike between two fingers. He hoped he'd heard wrong. What did you say? Gong Yishao died? When did this happen? Who did it? Even in the original work, the worst part of Gong Yishao's fate had been an assignment to Huanhua Palace's border territories, where he had become a trivial character. Who did it? said Little Palace Mistress asked. The Little Palace Mistress asked savagely. You still have the face to ask who did. Okay, let me just calm down. I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing it a little bit with this woman. Like, do you really think he would ask that in that way if he was the person who murdered? Really? Huanhua Palace's disciples surrounded Shen Jingque, robes rustling. Kill this despicable villain, the Little Palace Mistress ordered. Take revenge for Gong Yi Shishong and for the Shishong and Shiji who were guarding the water prison. Satisfy their grudges. Shen Jingque's heart went cold. Could Liu Binghe really have slaughtered every last one of the disciples guarding the water prison, including Gong Yishao? I really hope not. I don't think so, but I also really hope not, because I will struggle to know if that's the case. Like, MXTX has managed to turn around my opinion on people before, so I'm not ruling it out completely, but it will be considerably more difficult. And what was the loss of those hundreds of lions being blamed on him for instead? Stupid brat, you don't get it regardless of what we say, he said angrily. Don't you see that my student doesn't know? Without hesitation, Xingjing Peak's disciples entered the fray as well. However, swords have no eyes, so lest Shen Jingque wanted to be stabbed, he had no time for careful thought. As this fight wouldn't end if they continued as they were, he leapt out of the tavern, lightly calling back, "Come on out." As he'd hoped, both camps followed after him, rather than go for each other, every disciple trying to squeeze out the door first. But as soon as Xiang made it onto the main street, he was dumbfounded. A long row of cultivators dressed in various colors were waiting there, ready for battle, glaring like tigers eyeing their prey. Fair enough. After all, they'd made such a loud commotion in the tavern. It would have been pretty unscientific if they failed to draw the attention of other people, right? With a light push of his foot, changing to his steps, skimmed the roof tiles, and he landed on the eaves with a flip. He took a deep breath, then yelled from the pit of his stomach, "Liu! Qing! Go!" And that is where we're gonna end it for today. That was painful. I wasn't expecting Gong Yishao to die. A part of me is wishing that he's just missing and they've misconstrued it as him having died, but I don't want to pin my hope on that because, as I just said, MXTX is not afraid of killing off characters, so I don't want to get my hopes up unnecessarily. It would be much better to just have it be a pleasant surprise if he doesn't end up being dead. Oh, that was difficult, and I'm guessing it's gonna get more difficult considering the chapter title before it hopefully gets better. But yeah, I hope you guys still enjoyed it. Let me just quickly check. Yeah, so we are now on page 152, so we didn't do too badly. We did almost 50 pages. But yeah, I will let you guys know when the next live is because I'm still a little bit unsure. If nothing else, it will probably be when is it? It'll probably be next Sunday, but I'm gonna try and see if I can't do on this Thursday and Tuesday as well. No, I have not yet seen the new cover, and I'm still waiting for my copy of Volume 3, and there's already pre-orders for Volume 4. I cannot keep up, it feels like, because South Africa getting the books is so slow. But yeah, so we're gonna be finishing up Scum Villian and Volume 1 of Mordu, and then we're moving back to Volume 3. And depending on how long everything takes, we might jump immediately into Volume 4 before going back to Mordu and the last 2 volumes of Scum Villian. I don't know. But yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!